Hey guys, this is the last video of the year. I know that probably makes you happy, 2.5 weeks of school to go. I know it sure does make me happy. But this is section 7.5. It's the last section of chapter 5. It is solving rational equations. Most of you will find this a whole heck of a lot easier than 7.4 was. 7.4 is kind of a beast, especially to try to learn outside of the classroom without me presently there helping you. So if you struggled a little, that's probably to be expected with you not being in the classroom. All right, so 7.5, we're going to solve rational equations. This you guys should already know. Anytime you have a fraction set equal, all you have to do is cross multiply, okay? So when we cross multiply, it's like the butterfly effect. 9 times x plus 1, 3 times x, 4x plus 5. So we do it here. We get this right here. And then all we do, guys, is we distribute and then we solve. Okay, so distribute your 3 in, distribute your 9 in, and then it's just simple algebra from there. X equals 2. That should not have been new. All right, the dreaded word problem. This seems really, really complicated, but when we break it down, it's really not that bad. All right, so it says an alloy is formed by mixing 2 or more metals. Sterling silver is an alloy composed of 92.5% silver and 7.5% copper by weight. You have 15 ounces of 80 grade silver, which is 80% silver and 20% copper by weight. How much pure silver should you add of the 800 grade silver to make sterling silver? All right, so if we look at this, I've kind of written out the key to this, and it is that to know that the percentage of copper in the mixture is just the weight of the copper divided by the entire weight of the mixture. That's what percentage is, and that's what we're trying to find here. So if we can break it down into there, that's the hard part of it. All right, so first thing we want to do is we want to take this equation that I've written out, and we just want to plug stuff into it, okay? So percentage of copper by mixture. Sterling silver is 7.5% copper by weight. So we want sterling silver, so we want this to be 7.5% or 0.075. That's going to be the percentage of copper in the mixture. Now, the total weight of the copper in the mixture, well, let's look at this. Sterling silver, or not sterling silver, 800 grade silver, which we're adding, is 20% copper by weight, okay? And we know there's 15 ounces of it. Okay, so 15 ounces, we want 20% of that, and that's what's going to be our copper. So 15 times 0.2. And then it's going to be over the total weight of the mixture. Well, we're starting with 15 ounces, and then we're adding some unknown weight of copper, so we're just letting this unknown weight of copper be x. Okay, so now I've very much simplified a complicated problem into an easily solvable equation. So from here, we're going to cross multiply. So we get 7.5% or 0.075 times the denominator. And then remember, this is just over 1. So this is just times 1. Then we're just going to distribute and solve, guys. So distribute through, then do a little bit of algebra. And we end up with x is 25, which means we should be adding 25 ounces of pure silver with 15 ounces of 800 grade silver. All right, solve each equation using the LCD. Okay, so this is one thing that does carry over from 7.4. We have to find the LCD and use it. And when we do this, we want to find the LCD of all 3 of these terms. Okay, well, this is x, it's in simplified form. This is 4, it's in simplified form. So we could easily see that the LCD is just 4x. We're just going to multiply those. All right, so when we have an equation like this, we can do it a couple ways. I'm going to show you one way, and then I'm going to show you a different way. I think this is probably the easier way just because you eliminate the denominators right away. You have to do a little more algebra, but a lot of people really struggle with fractions. All right, so once we find the LCD, all we're going to do is we're going to multiply each of these terms by this LCD. So we're going to multiply the 5 over x times 4x, the 7 over 4 times 4x, the negative 9 over x times 4x. Okay, so just like this. After we get to here, we're going to cross like terms. And the reason that I like this and we get rid of the fractions right away is because everything in the denominator cancels out. Okay, so this x and this x, 4 and 4, x and x. You should, at this point, you should not have a denominator in the fraction. Okay, and after we've crossed them out, we just, what's left? Let's simplify it. So all we have is 4 times 5, 7 times x, and then 4 times negative 9. So if we multiply those together, we just get 20 plus 7x equals negative 36. And then it's just simple algebra, guys. Bring it down to solve. We get x equals negative 8. All right, so let's do the same thing over here. For some of you, you like putting this over 1. It doesn't really matter. If that one makes you feel better, do it. But once again, we're going to find our LCD. Well, our LCD, x is simplified as much as it can be. X minus 5 is simplified as much as it can be. So we're just going to multiply them together. When we multiply them together, we get x times x minus 5. Do not distribute this. Okay, you're going to make your life miserable if you do. Keep it like this. All right, after you have your LCD, it's the same process, guys. We're going to multiply each of these terms by the LCD. Okay, so x times x minus 5 times 1, x times x minus 5 times 8 over x minus 5, and then x times x minus 5 over 3 over x. And then when we do that, we can cancel like factors. So once again, when you get to this point, everything in the denominator of the fractions should be canceled. If they're not, you didn't do something right, whether that be cross things out or fill in the LCD, but your denominator should be all gone by this point. Here, we're going to simplify. We're left with x times x minus 5. Here, we're just left with an x and an 8, so minus 8x, and then a 3 times x minus 5. Okay, we are going to distribute now and simplify a little bit more. So distribute this through. Notice we do have a quadratic. And when we go to solve, we want this quadratic to equal to 0. So we're just going to subtract everything from one side into the other. We get x squared minus 16x plus 15. Now, this factors nicely. I mean, you could do quadratic formula, completing square, whatever, but I think we all kind of prefer factoring. When it factors this easily, two numbers that multiply to 15 add to negative 16, that's negative 15 and negative 1, obviously. So when we factor this out to solve, x minus 15, x minus 1, which means our answers are x equals 15 and x equals 1. You should always plug those in to make sure they work, to make sure there's no extraneous solutions, but these do both work. All right, so we're going to take the first problem we just did and we're going to rework it, but we're going to rework it a different way. Just because I prefer the last way doesn't mean you should. Some of you may like this way better, so I figured I would show you. Now, if you understood the last way we did it and you just want to skip this part of the video, I totally get it. All right, so when we do this, guys, we still need to find the LCD, which is still 4x. Now, rather than getting rid of all of the denominators first, what we're going to do is we're going to change all these denominators to have the same denominators so we can just add across and then simplify from there. Okay, so when I do that, I want to multiply each one of these terms by what's missing in the LCD. So like 5 over x, x is the denominator, it's missing a 4. 7 over 4, well, the denominator's missing an x. And then negative 9 over x, we have x in the denominator, so it's also missing a 4. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to multiply by the missing part. Now, this should be 4 over 4. Remember, we can't multiply just by a 4 or just by an x or just by a 4. We have to multiply it by 1. Okay, 4 over 4. There we go. That's better. All right. So when we do that, after we do that, I guess we can just simplify straight across. So 4 times 5 is 20 over 4x, 7 times x over 4x, and then negative 36 over 4x. After we get here, we have common denominators, so we can just add them together. Okay, easy set. Now, this is where Miss Slayton and I, who made these slides, yes, we do this different. So I'm going to show you something other than Miss Slayton. I think it's easier. So from here, notice we have these same denominators. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by the denominator to get rid of fractions. Okay, so I'm going to put that right here. Okay, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to multiply it by 4x, and if I multiply the right side by 4x, I have to multiply the left side by 4x. Okay. Now when I do that, the reason I do that is because I'm not going to have to do a lot. Now 4x and 4x cancel, 4x and 4x cancel. Okay. So after I multiply, I'm going to cross cancel, like, oh, just cross cancel. Oh, it's dead. And then from here, it's simplify. We would have done it Miss Slayton's way, we would have gotten the right answer, but we would have ended up with a quadratic function, which I don't want to do. So from here, we're just left with, that's not what we're left with. 20 plus 7x equals negative 36. Okay. And then if I add 20 on both sides, plus 20. Oh, I want to subtract 20. Sorry, guys. And so then I'd be left with 7x equals negative 56. So 7x equals negative 56. So you divide by 7 on both sides and you get x. Nope, that's not what I want to do. You get x equals negative 8. Sorry, I know this down here was kind of confusing when it was really the least confusing part. I'm sure it was a lot easier to do on hand than it was to just watch that. But as you can see, we got x equals negative 8 here, got x equals negative 8 here. So you choose whichever way you like better and go that route. It doesn't matter to me as long as you can show me what work you've done. All right, let's do one a little more complicated, but this still isn't too bad, guys. What I want you to notice is that x squared minus 9 is the difference of squares. So it is actually x minus 3 times x plus 3. Okay, if I were to simplify this x squared minus 9, that's what it would simplify to. All right, so when I go to find the LCD, I always find the LCD first. It's just going to be x minus 3 times x plus 3 because that covers everything here. So LCD. So just like we did before, we're going to multiply each of these 3 by the LCD. Or if you want to do it the way I just showed you, you can do that as well. So when I do that, this is what I get. And then I can cross cancel like terms. So the x minus 3, both of them cancel here, and x plus 3 and x plus 3. And the reason we do that is because all of our denominators are now gone and we are not dealing with a fraction. Okay, so when I'm done with that, I'm just going to simplify it, clean it up a little bit, ask myself what's left over. So this is what I have left over. Distribute it, clean it up a little more. I have a quadratic, so I want to move everything to one side. Okay, like here. And then after I get to here, I want to look to see if I can factor. But first I notice that I can pull a 2 out. That'll make my life a little bit easier. And then two numbers that multiply to negative 18, add to 3. What are they? Negative 6 and positive 6 and negative 3. So because this here isn't a 1, would have to do the box method. So do the box method with that, and you would get that this factors to 2 times x plus 3, 2x minus 3. And from there, we can find our zeros. So x plus 3 equals 0 when x is negative 3. 2x minus 3 equals 0 when x is 3 halves. Then I want to, actually, I don't even have to plug it in. I can look up here, guys, and we can't insert negative 3 in here because that would make our denominator 0. So we know right off that we can't use negative 3. So our only solution then would be x equals 3 halves. All right, a couple more, then we'll be done. All right, so consider the function f of x is 2 over x plus 3. We want to find whether or not the inverse of f is a function, and then we need to find the function. We've done this before, so this should not be new to you guys. So the first thing we need to do is graph it, which I have done, okay? I want to graph it. Now, when I graph it, I want to look at this to see, is there any horizontal, remember horizontal is left or right, is there any horizontal line I can draw here that would intersect this graph twice? No, there's not. It will never intersect the graph more than once, and therefore the inverse of this is a function, okay? So now that I know that, I want to find the inverse. So remember, when I find the inverse, all I'm going to do is flip our x and our y. So f of x is the same as y, and then I'm just going to flip them out, okay? So make my y x, my x y. And then just solve, okay? Cross multiply, do a little bit of algebra. Here's my answer. That would be the function of the inverse. So y equals 2 over x minus 3. All right, last one, it's a word problem, but it is not a hard word problem. Now it says in section 7.2, example 5, you wrote the function this. Now, if we were doing this in class and we did this in the same week, you'd probably remember it, but you're probably thinking, how the heck do I remember what 7.2 example 5 was? I don't expect you to. But we did do an example that had this. And it dealt with a 3D printer. The cost, which is C, of a 3D printer, and M represent how many models we were making with that printer. So find how many models must be printed for the average cost of the model to fall to $90. So we want the cost here to be $90. So all we're going to do is plug this 90 in for C. Okay. Now, once I do this to solve, I'm going to multiply, here we go, multiply by m on both sides. And the reason I can do that is because now this m and this m cancel. So I don't have a fraction anymore. So then I'm left with 90m equals 50m plus 1,000 minus the 50m. Guys, the rest is easy. So 25. We would have to have 25 models for the cost to be $90. All right, B, it says using the inverse of the function. Okay, so all I'm going to do here, I'm going to start with the same equation, and I'm just going to solve for m. Okay, so here's the equation. Once again, multiply by m on both sides. When I do that, this and this cancel, and I'm left with this. Okay, now if I want to solve this for m, I want all the m's on one side of the equation. So I'm going to move the 50m over. Okay, now notice both of these terms have an m in it, so I can factor out an m. Okay, and then to get m by itself, I'm just going to divide out that c minus 50. So my m is 1,000 over c minus 50. All right, guys. Homework for this section is on big ideas. Like I said, this is our last video. Please reach out if you have any questions or need my help. Thanks and have a good one.